Okay, what's going on, guys? Let me start with the disclaimers. So, I am not a healthcare professional, I'm not a doctor. This is not intended to be medical advice. I'm just passing along my experience and some information that I found to hopefully educate anybody who wants to learn. Also, I have no agenda other than passing along objective information and facts. I'm not like pro kava or anti kava. I take it from time to time. I've taken it in multiple forms. I enjoy it. Other than that, so full disclosure, I have no agenda. Okay, so kava is the Tongan slash Marquesian word for bitter, and it's the most common. There are many, many different names that kava gets called, but in the Western world, it's usually called kava. Sometimes grog is like a slang term for the mixture or the tea itself. Um, the chemical or scientific name is Piper methesticum, which translated from Latin is means intoxicating pepper. The way it's made quickly, the root is used to drink. It's powdered. It's root powder. You put it in a bag. I've done it before. You strain it. You knead it kind of like dough, and it comes out looking like this muddy water stuff. It's got sedative, euphoric, anesthetic properties, muscle relaxing properties. Um, it's a good anxiolytic in my experience, and from what you would find if you did some research on it. The alkaloids which are responsible for its psychoactive properties are known as cavalactones, and there are many of them, but the ones that are responsible, there are six cavalactones that are in noble kava, and we're going to go over the difference between noble and two-day or not noble kava. But there are six cavalactones that are responsible for 96% of the pharmacological activity from noble kava. And I found this to be really fascinating. Kava's got like six plus different mechanisms of action. And let me define that in case you don't know. In pharmacology, the term mechanism of action refers to the specific biochemical interaction through which a drug substance produces its pharmacological effect. Usually includes mention of the specific molecular targets to which the drug binds, such as enzyme or receptor. An easy to understand example of this would be morphine. Say its mechanism of action would be that it binds to opiate receptors in the brain, producing an analgesic effect. So just so you understand that, kava, raw kava powder, and extracts from noble kava have at least six mechanisms of action, possibly more, and I'm going to go over those as quickly as I can, but it's super interesting. So the first one, potentiation of GABA A receptor. Now, if you're taking something like a Xanax, the molecule itself is going to bind, like the molecule that you ingest is going to bind to your GABA receptors. In this case, in Kava's case, it potentiates or enhances or increases the binding of your own natural endogenous um, molecules which attach. They're called ligands. Some of them are called ligands. So your own endogenous molecules which attach and activate your GABA receptor, kava is going to enhance and increase the activity of those. And GABA is known as the brakes for your brain. It's a colloquial way to describe it. So next, inhibition of the reuptake of norepinephrine and dopamine. So this is another interesting one because norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors and in some cases dopamine reuptake inhibitors are that's the mechanism of action for certain antidepressants, and I think there's one other type of symptom that dopamine reuptake inhibitors try to treat, but that's something interesting. So it'll increase the concentrations of those two neurotransmitters in the synapse. It binds to Oh, and these different kavalactones perform different mechanisms of action. Some only one, some two, some three. I don't think any of them perform more than three. But so and all six of them kind of combine together and produce this effect. So third, it binds to the CB1 receptor, which is a cannabinoid receptor, which gave me a little bit of insight into the effects that I've gotten from kava because, and I've heard it described before too, you can kind of get like a marijuana like body buzz, like muscle relaxing buzz from kava. It's very like this, it's very physical. You know what I'm talking about, and I would guess that the CB1 receptor activation is responsible for that partially. Um, it inhibits voltage gated sodium channels and ion and calcium channels, and those channels play a role in how excited or stimulated or sedated your brain is going to be. So it kind of, those systems regulate that. Monoamine oxidase B inhibition. Um, this is another interesting one because you've probably heard of MAOIs, monoamine oxidase inhibitors, are yet another form of antidepressants. Um, this one, in this case, from what I found, kava inhibits monoamine oxidase B only. There's also evidence for glycine activity from kava root, and glycine is a non-essential amino acid. Non-essential because your body produces it naturally if you don't ingest enough. Um, but it's a non-essential amino acid that's responsive, that plays a role in sleep and anxiety reduction, relaxation. Um, the literature that I was looking at mentioned that extracts have been observed to exhibit many more mechanisms of action, and the notable ones that I wrote down were, there's some evidence um, that they touch opioid receptors. That's self-explanatory. Histamine receptors, which would be something like Benadryl or um, there are other, well, antihistamines are known for, you know, making you drowsy, making you sleepy, relaxing you. There are some that are prescribed for anxiety, and 5-HT, multiple 5-HT receptors, which, if you know what 5-HTP is, it's a precursor to serotonin, but I don't know if it's tryptophan or hydroxytryptophan. You might hear, like, when you have turkey at Thanksgiving, it contains tryptophan. It makes you sleepy. That's the same receptor, those 5-HT receptors. Um, Something interesting, which kind of gives you hints on the non-toxic, safe, sort of natural nature of the effects of kava, are that a GABA inhibitor, flumazenil, did not reverse effects of GABA sedation in mice. So, in other words, opiates have, it's an antagonist. Opiates have antagonists where, like, say you take fentanyl, you take an opiate antagonist, it kicks the fentanyl off the receptor and the effects are reversed. There are similar molecules for the GABA receptor where it will kick, if you take a Xanax and then you take flumazenil, the flumazenil will kick the Xanax off of the GABA receptor and reverse the effects. This flumazenil did not reverse the effects of the sedation in mice. So, just an interesting piece of information that I wanted to pass on. Okay, now health risks, and I'm going to get to the whole liver issue. I did a lot of research on this. I looked at quite a few abstracts from PubMed, a bunch of different websites, and here's what I got. So in 2016, the World Health Organization and the Food and Agriculture Organization concluded that research indicates kava consumption has an acceptably low health risk. They cited a long history of use for instances of moderate consumption. There's only anecdotal reports of things like minor things like lethargy and headaches, which is like feeling tired when you're not supposed to feel tired. Um, Extract studies are more limited, but still there was no solid evidence of significant health risks. Now, heavy long-term use. This is the part that maybe some of you are like waiting to see. This is where I'm going to talk about the liver stuff. So, heavy long-term use has been associated with slightly elevated liver enzymes and some other minor, like a skin rash, weight loss, nausea, indigestion. Um, these are all not super common, and they are all reversible upon stopping your use of kava. And one notable thing that I found also is that there is no, with even with heavy long-term kava use, there's no negative effect on cognition. So it's not gonna like degrade your cognitive functioning over time, even if you use it heavily and long term. Now, what does elevated liver enzymes mean? Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just interested in this stuff. Um, I believe that slightly elevated liver enzymes does not necessarily mean liver injury, or even that your liver is going to have issues. I think it just kind of means something like it's some added stress on your liver, and like I said, it's reversible. um so just everything in moderation. If so, PubMed, yeah, this another PubMed article that I just wanted to cite. There was the incidence of liver toxicity is 1 in 60 to 125 million patients. So that's pretty rare. It seems like there is a small risk, but it's not a very large risk. Um, what you can do is just make sure that you buy from reputable vendors, especially with extracts, because the issue with getting extracts is leftover impurities from the extraction process. So if the manufacturer has some less than ideal manufacturing practices, and you buy from them, and there's contaminants in your extract, then that can cause problems. But it seems like today in 2023, the issue with liver toxicity and health risks associated with kava, it seems like it would be contaminants and not the kava itself. And this is where some of the rumors of liver toxicity, and um, it was kava was banned in Europe at one point because of these liver issues. And here's what I could find about that. So I talked earlier about noble versus 2-day kava. Now, noble and 2-day kavas all have the same kavalactones in them, but they have them in very different ratios. The noble kavas are going to be mainly comprised of the six, which I didn't name, but there are six kavalactones which are in all of the noble kavas, the main constituents of the noble kavas. 2-day will have higher concentrations of kavalactones, which are not those six kavalactones. They have psychoactive effects, but they also have a higher level of toxicity. Now, earlier, most of these liver issue reports were from the 90s and the early 2000s, and it seems from what I've been able to find is that the issue was the supply of kava being tainted with these 2-day kavas, and they're not the healthiest, and they have unsafe alkaloid ratios, and it seems likely that that's where those reports of liver issues came from. So in 2004, something really interesting, the 2-day kavas are pretty much exclusive to the nation of Vanuatu. In 2004, Vanuatu banned the export of 2-day kavas because of this issue, because it was kind of causing the reputation of the kava industry to take a hit. It was hurting the economy because it's a big revenue generator for those islands, and it seems like it hasn't it hasn't been an issue. I couldn't find any. I scoured a lot of articles, and there were no recent articles or reports conclusively linking kava to liver toxicity, liver injuries. It seems like something that's possible, but very, very unlikely. And again, there's that thing with heavy long term use. Your liver enzymes can be slightly elevated, probably indicative of a little bit of stress on the liver. So let's move on to the drug interactions, which there are not really many. Um, it's pretty much just alcohol and anxiolytics like benzos, Xanax, that kind of thing, barbiturates. These can have a synergistic effect with kava, which is like a 1 plus 1 equals 3 or 4 type thing. They can bring they have a positive effect, or I mean, they increase the activity of each other. So it is highly unadvised to mix kava with alcohol or other anxiolytics, other GABAergic anxiolytics. Um, there's also a contraindication with the dopamine agonist levodopa, which is commonly prescribed for Parkinson's, and that can have an effect on the relief that you get from the Parkinson's symptoms. It has this on and off effect, and if you take kava while you're taking levodopa, it can increase that relieved, not relieved, relieved, not relieved effect. Okay, so dosage. The dosage of kava can be tricky because of the phenomenon known as reverse tolerance. It's the best explanation, and I looked really hard. It seems like the explanation for the phenomenon of reverse tolerance is just that kavaloctones will build up in your system over time, and I couldn't find the science behind how that works. I couldn't find any conclusive um, reason for why it is. It seems like just theories that like this is probably why it is. So that was the only thing I could find. But reverse tolerance seems to be a thing where it's the opposite of most drugs. You keep on using kava over time, and you have to take less and less to feel the effects. So keep that in mind with the dosage. A couple websites mentioned low dose would be 50 to 100 milligrams of kavaloctones. Medium, 100 to 200 milligrams of kavaloctones. High, 200 to 300 milligrams of kavaloctones. Root powder, the percentage of kavaloctones for raw root powder, and this is according to the Food Standards of Australia and New Zealand, a document from this organization named Food Standards of Australia and New Zealand, is between 3 and 20%. Now that's a big range. Another thing to keep in mind is that the kavaloctone ratios are going to make a difference in the effects. So it can be hard to be precise with the dose of kava, But to give you an example of how big of a difference in the plant matter that you're going to need, if you want, so this is all for a low dose. If you have weak kava at the 3% range, you're going to need 20 to 40 grams to achieve 50 to 100 milligrams. For medium kava, you're only going to need 10 to 13 grams to achieve 50 to 100 milligrams. If you have strong kava, you're only going to need 4 to 7 grams to achieve 50 to 100 milligrams. And you can extrapolate that to medium and high dosages. The onset of kava is 15 to 30 minutes in most cases. The peak effects are 30 minutes to 2.5 hours, and the after effects can last 2.5 to 6 hours. I couldn't find what seemed to be an accurate exact half-life for kavalactones, and I would assume that each individual kavalactone is probably a little bit different, so it's not like, finding the half-life of one, substance, because this is kind of multiple substances. Your stomach contents will make a difference to all of those. Medications and supplements that you're taking can affect all of those. The grind of kava, um, the if it's a smaller grind, the molecules themselves are going to be smaller and they'll get absorbed more quickly and go into your bloodstream more quickly. Whether it's powder, extract, pills, those are all going to have effects on how long it takes to get into your system, how long it's going to last, and that's about it. So, just quickly on my experience, I've tried the traditional homemade, like I've made it myself, like I mentioned, with the bag and the water and straining it out, drinking it. It's pretty gross. It's an acquired taste, but it's pretty pleasant. I've used the Aluball, which is like a shaker cup thing that works pretty well. I've used micronized, I've used extracts, and I think the extract might be in the picture that I put up. Um, Kava is, the effects are subtle, but definitely very real and very, like, it's hard to explain because it's subtle and at the same time very, very effective and very noticeable. Um, I mentioned before there's like a muscle relaxant type body high that's kind of akin to a marijuana high, but without the same psychoactive effects that the marijuana high gives. Um, and along with that, you kind of get almost like if you're laying down, it'll feel like you're kind of sinking into your bed a little bit. Um, I have gotten mildly lowered inhibition, maybe feeling more sociable, stuff like that, kind of akin to alcohol, but I've never gotten slurred speech. Um, I've, with some higher doses, my vestibular senses have been affected a little bit, which is like balance, physical equilibrium kind of deal. I've experienced that a little bit, not too much, but I've never kind of consumed crazy amounts either. Um, the most notable effect for me, I've always had trouble sleeping. It is an excellent sleep aid, and it leaves you feeling rested. I took some last night for the first time in a while, and I woke up feeling better than I have in a while. Um, so it works really well, but a lot of times sleep aids won't leave you feeling rested, or you'll feel groggy in the morning and you'll feel weird, and it'll take you time for your mind and your body to acclimate to being awake. With me, it has not been the case with kava. It has been an awesome sleep aid for me. um, so that's really the only thing I would rave about. Otherwise, it seems like a pretty safe substance. um, and my thoughts on the non-toxic nature of it before I close this out, there's a lot going on with the pharmacology, and it seems like kava does a little bit of many different things, and they all kind of work together, but they're all pushing you in the same direction. Um, and I think that's why kind of toxicity and overdose and addiction are not an issue, because it does quite a few, it subtly does quite a few different, pretty natural, um, natural to your body. Like the mechanisms of action are natural to your body, and it's doing all these things in a subtle way at once, but they synergize and add up to an effect that's much stronger than the sum total of its individual parts. That's purely speculation, not based on any research whatsoever. This is a little bit longer than I wanted it to. I kind of jumped around a little bit, but I hope um, some people get something from this. And again, like I said at the beginning, my goal with this video and probably with this channel is to just bring objective information about this stuff, because I'm big on harm reduction. I'm big on education. Um, I want to get information out there, and it can only be beneficial when you know the facts, and it's important to be educated in order to be safe. So with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hope you enjoyed it.